Today might have been the best day of Bears training camp. We break that down next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
I'm going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. What is going on, Bears fans? Like we were just talking about, a lot of reports out there saying this was the best day for the offense today in Chicago Bears training camp. So you got to love it. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to be breaking down today. And we'll have you covered with every day of practice. Just make sure to stay tuned. So before we get into all the awesomeness, we do have to get the injuries out of the way. I like to just kind of do this up front so that we don't have to talk about them later on. Actually, one of them we'll talk a little bit more later on about. But if we go through some of the injuries, first things first, Scott Daly, the long snapper, got carted off the field. Now, yet again, carted off can mean a couple different things. So it's not like a normal NFL game where that usually means serious injury. If you've ever been to Hallis Hall, it is gigantic. So him being carted off is more so because it's a long walk back. It's faster so they can get things in. So we don't know the severity, but it is something that we're going to monitor. Other two things too is that Ricky Stromberg is currently in concussion protocol, and also too, Jonah Jackson still out with that lingering leg injury. No word from Zay Frazier with that personal issue that he was kind of going with. But so there's a couple people out as of right now. Also, Deion Hankins, the undrafted rookie free agent running back, left early with an injury as well. Something to monitor, but very unlikely he makes the team. But just something to at least kind of monitor and noteworthy. And then last but not least, the big news when it comes down to Jalen Johnson is that when Ben Johnson was asked about the Jalen Johnson injury, he talked a little bit about how he could be available for week 1, or he thinks that there is a scenario that he's available for week 1. Doesn't give you a whole lot of confidence that he's actually going to be out there week 1. We'll talk about that a little bit later, potentially for our reality check. Hint, hint. But let's get into the good stuff, right? We have to talk about this, our instant reaction to today's practice. This was the offense's day. And for those out there on YouTube, you can kind of see some of these comments that we had. 79th and Hallis saying long 2.5 hour practice. That's another thing too. The longest practice of the day. Ben Johnson actually had an interview beforehand, and he's like, we're going to see what everyone's made of, right? This is going to be our longest practice of the day. So let's see what everyone's made out of. And yeah, it turns out to be one of the best ones for the offense. Larry Mayer agrees as well. He said Bears quarterback Caleb Williams having his best practice of training camp, in my opinion. Perfect touch, floating long passes to Luther Burden and Olamide Zaccheaus, and rifling completion to DJ Moore over the middle. So with this, it just feels good, right? Everything that it was one of the longest practices. And also Ben Johnson even talked about this in his interview before the practice, where with Wednesday's practice that we covered, I kind of mentioned how nothing really happened. It was a very blah type of practice. And Ben Johnson actually took accountability on that and said that that was on him. He felt like he didn't script the things the way that he wanted it, and kind of took ownership of himself for a lot of the walkthroughs. He felt like it could have been better, which honestly, kudos to him, right? He's accountable on himself as well, which is great to see a coach do that. But this is just even though that it was like not a great practice on Wednesday, it's awesome to see the coach kind of taking his own accountability on himself and saying like, yeah, could have made it a little bit better. But with today, everyone was in pads, and let's go into, so it was a padded practice today, and let's go into our number 1 star. We always do hype trains for the big star, big riser, and then the reality check for kind of the biggest downer of the day. But we got to talk about, when we break down the hype train, it was Luther Burden. Luther Burden, those on YouTube can see all these comments. No matter what you slice it as, everybody was saying Luther Burden, Luther Burden, Luther Burden. there was a lot of highlights of him making incredible catches, whether it was just like a little slant or an out route. And there was another catch that he made this acrobatic grab and then was able to touch 2 feet in. He made plays. And that, I think, is the biggest thing, is that he made plays with the ball in the air. And as we already know that he knows how to do, he made plays after the catch. There was one time, I believe what it was like about 4th and 20. And then he caught the ball and then was able to make some people make something happen afterwards and get an extra 10 yards to convert it and move the chains. And that's what he provides you. That's what we've kind of said with Luther Burden. At a minimum, my evaluation of Luther Burden was that this guy is explosive after the catch. Now, when it comes down to route running, that is something that we've seen progression on. That's why I can't wait for the preseason game, because I want to truly break down what is he looking like. Now, yet we know that that's not going to be the true offense, but it'll be interesting to see how is he running routes. But man, he was the person that just kept, everyone just was saying, turning heads, and like I said, making everything amazing. But also too, Luther Burden had an interview today before practice, and he said that he feels like he knows his stuff. He said Ben holds everybody to a high standard here. It's great for us, great for the team, and that's the standard here. When Luther Burden, and that's what Luther Burden said after someone was questioning him, saying, "Hey, how did you take getting called out by Ben?" And and he said, you have to know your stuff, and that's great, right? The standard is the standard. That's what even Luther was talking about, and that's what Ben has talked about as well, and that's what we're all feeling. And also too, Luther Burden caught passes not just from Caleb Williams, but also from Tyson Bagent. Adam Johns reporting that Luther Burden with 2 good contested catches in the first team period, 1 from Caleb Williams and 1 from Tyson Bagent. And that's the thing. No matter what, he was getting open. He was making grabs. He was making plays after the catch. All great stuff for Luther Burden, who we gave a fully guaranteed contract to. So right now, yet again, this is just one day, but man, it feels good. And Greg Braggs Jr., I have a little quote. He was talking about this, and he said he just has that it factor to him, just when you see Luther Burden play. And yeah, when the ball's in his hands, I've talked about this before. That's where he's special, man. That's when he can really do something. So it's nice to hear too him making plays on the ball while it's in the air. So after the whole Luther Burden love fest, we now have to go down to our reality check, where I kind of jotted down 2 little things. One, I wanted to at least put out just Jalen Johnson, right? That was the biggest reality check that we got hit with this morning, when they're like, hey, yeah, he might not be ready for week 1, is kind of how most people interpreted this. We'll see if he will actually be available. We'll see how injuries kind of shake out. And we talked about this when we were breaking down the cornerbacks, that when it comes down to Jalen Johnson, this was someone that has been banged up before, and he had his first kind of fully healthy season last season. Now, his injury has always been his shoulder, but with this is a leg injury, but still, you would like to see him out there against the Vikings, where he's going against Justin Jefferson, potentially. Justin Jefferson is a little banged up. He's also questionable for week 1 as well. But you want to see your star corner out there, especially when cornerback 2 is kind of up for grabs. You want to at least have kind of that your outside player a little bit more solidified. Even though he's not going to get a lot of snaps, he's good enough to just kind of be slotted in and play. And also, this defensive backfield played with each other last year. Yeah, it's a different system, but when you're talking about corners, you're talking about different zone schemes and feels. And as far as we know, there's not anything that's specialized. With the Fangio system, you'd play a zone that can convert into a man coverage assignment. There's nothing that I've heard from or seen from Dennis Allen's system that would indicate anything like that. That would be a little bit more complex from a cornerback perspective. But then last little bit, I want to just throw this out there just because we have football today from the Lions. And man, there's more than a week until the Bears play. That was a little reality check for me, because I texted my buddy who's a Lions fan. Oh man, we must be playing soon. Nope, still a little bit over a week in order for us to play. So Now that we got the reality check out of the way, let's get into the offensive recap, where a couple other little pieces from it. So we'll continue to go a little negative, and then we'll just kind of skew back to the positive route. Now, a couple of the negatives. Zach Pearson reported only hiccups from the first team offense today was in 11 on 11 just now. There was a bad snap. Williams recovers for a completion. There's a delay of game, which this is the second day in a row that they've had a delay of game. And also a bad snap, a throwaway that became intentional grounding. And same thing, like 79th and Hallis reported shaky 2-minute drill ends with a Caleb interception to Tyreek Stevenson. A lot of pressure was coming. I believe Montez Sweat was the person with the pressure. But yeah, so at the very end, there's a poor 2-minute drill, but then a couple of hiccups. And from what I'm hearing too, is that there was a lot of just amazing plays from this offense. But there was a little bit of like the fundamental pieces that were just kind of lacking a little bit. So I think that it still should be something that you feel good about, where we know that from an operation perspective, that they still have been getting better and better and better. But it is worth noting that they're not perfect, right? This is still week 2 of the training camp. There's still a lot more install that they have to go through. There's still a lot more that the Bears expect them to be perfect on. And yeah, they're going to have some issues no matter what ends up happening. But still, it's nice to see that. I think that like right now, it's good to see that there's at least these pop plays of like, hey, this is why we were playing this way. This is why we're doing these things the way we are doing them. And now we're seeing some promise. We're seeing some hope with this offense overall. And I think that is what's so exciting about this team. But also, if we continue to go through some other little pieces, and actually I will move that one until a little bit later. But as we kind of go through some of the offense, let me switch these little things around and I'll actually just throw it to myself. But when we go down to the offense, first thing, there was a lot of deep balls that were completed today. And the big reason why that's of note is that, like we've said before on this show, Caleb has not been good at throwing the deep ball in the NFL. In college, he was good. In the NFL, he's rather struggled with it. There was multiple deep balls that were completed. One was to Olamide Zaccheaus. He was kind of rolled out, threw it opposite side, and ends up putting it perfect. Kind of a classic Caleb Williams type of throw that we saw in college that translated over. Also, like I might have said this, might have not. Ozzie Trapillo was with the ones primarily today. You still kind of saw some little swaps in and out. Also, too, a little bit of Ben also talked about one of the reasons why they liked Ozzie Trapillo so much is just Boston College uses a pro system. So it just kind of helps them with being a little bit more pro ready. And also, Cole Kmet got highlighted a little bit too, saying that he's a bit of a unicorn and you can use him anywhere. So kind of some high praise when a lot of people see the Cole Kmet as this tight end 2 or took some snaps with the second team. Some people got a little bit concerned about that. Like what I said on this show, you don't have to worry about that. They just want to move people around. And that's exactly it, right? Cole is still very good. And also still Colston Loveland, I think that he's kind of moved down a lot of the hype radars because now you have Luther Burden taking a lot of that hype. Colston's still looking very, very smooth out there. He's still a very good route runner. He's still making some good catches. And also Adam Hogue mentioned that he stonewalled Amen Agbangbamiga twice in blocking drills. So yes, he can still catch, but the blocking still looks on point. And I remember when we did our All 22 review, that blocking, fundamentally, he's good. It's that strength. Like linebackers, he's excellent on. But when it comes down to linemen, that's when there's still questions. Yet again, defensive lineman versus tight end. What do you expect? But linebacker's pretty good with. And as we continue going on, let me just kind of go through some of my notes. What else do we have? There was also a good ball to Roma Dunze that was caught. Same thing with Olamide Zaccheaus. Like I said, it was a rollout deep ball that was completed. And then other little pieces too. Bagent continues to look consistent. So yeah, Bagent's kind of flown under the radar now just because Caleb's been looking better and better. So we're able to report on Caleb looking so good because the backups looked like they had the best handle of the offense. Now you're seeing Caleb. have that, a good handle of the offense, completing a lot of his passes as well. Bajent still looking good for those that are curious. Also, too, Monanga, this was reported by Greg Braggs. He had a little giant recap of all sorts of camp nuggets, and he mentioned that to him, Monanga keeps falling forward, and kind of talked about how it always seems like he's getting 5 yards, which is one of the reasons why I know I love Kyle Monanga. Not the fastest, not the biggest, strongest, or anything like that, but the man he can find a hole. He's tough, he's gritty, and he's going to keep on fighting. So overall, this offense, a lot of hope, lot of hope, and a lot of movement in the right direction. And then next, we got to break down some of the defense. And actually, before we get over to the defense, I want to talk one other thing about the offense. So Courtney Cronin mentioned this. So saying Ben Johnson on what he's looking from the left tackle competition. To make me, so what he said is, to me, it's consistency. It's who's making the least number of mental errors. I think I said in the springtime, tackles to me have to be able to pass protect one-on-one on a regular basis and win those one-on-one matchups. Guys that are out there that we're not having to be conscious of with the play call to give them help all the time, that would be ideal. Certainly not the case everywhere I've been. Over the years, you've had to help them out with the play calls, but those guys that can block a defensive end one-on-one, they'll be really at a premium. So I think that there's a couple ways to read this, right? Because everyone wants to read into these. First off, Ozzie is the person that's been the most consistent out there when you're talking about health-wise and you're talking about making the least number of mental errors. He's very, very pro-ready, as previously stated. Now with Braxton had an interview today, and actually all the left tackles had an interview today. And I came away rooting for Braxton Jones more because you realized how difficult it is to come back from a broken ankle. And he mentioned multiple times this was a serious injury for him. And for him to come back from that is a big deal. Now, this is a big injury. He really highlighted the severity of that injury, which makes you a little nervous. And like I said, it makes you root for him more. But at the same time, this is a business. And I think that when you're talking about Ozzie being very consistent, I think a lot of signs point to Ozzie Trapillo with it. And obviously with Braxton, we just have to, yet again, see what his health is, because I still feel that's going to be the number one indicator of what ends up happening. Now, with Braxton, he has been asked to block a lot of people on islands one-on-one. That has been something that whenever we do our tape reviews after the games, that's something that we always see, is that a lot of times he's on those islands. He's not getting a lot of help. He's not getting chips. He's not getting a running back to help him out. It's just him versus one other person. So, yeah, he always gets bull rushed, but yeah, he never really got any help, which always kind of always made me scratch my head a little bit about there can be better ways to put Braxton in better situations. So left tackle, we'll still wait and see and ultimately see who ends up getting that job. But now let's flip over to the defense, where from a defensive standpoint, still, like we said, cornerback 2 battle is still out there. Tyreek had a interception at the very end for that shaky 2-minute drill, as people were kind of calling it. So interception, also allowed a couple catches as well. Also, Carl Jones Jr., as Brad Biggs put it, has shown up through the first week plus. Also, Montez Sweat looking good and getting a little bit of love as well. Also, another piece that I want to mention too is Dennis Allen. When he was asked about the pass rush, kind of paused a little bit. Didn't make you feel too good about it, but the thing that he's been doing is he's been dialing up a lot of blitzes. That's something that we've been consistently seeing and hearing about, is the number of blitzes that he's calling. Seems like they're going to be fairly blitz heavy. So a lot of reliability is going to be on these corners. Yet again, a lot of man coverage looks and other pieces like that people are going to be going through. But yeah, Montez Sweat with a sack today. Just kind of reading through if there's any other little pieces. Brad Biggs said rookie linebacker Ruben Hippolyte showed up with some plays throughout the session, which was just short of 2.5 hours. In a third down period, Caleb had a dart deep over the middle to Miles Boykin. Alameda Zacchaeus looked smooth running routes, right? lots of other little things that are out there with like what Big Z was reporting. But defense still feisty, still going to be aggressive. Still no indication of who exactly is going to be that cornerback 2. We're just going to keep on monitoring that situation. But besides that, that's about it from all of today. Great day today. Like I said, just phenomenal. And now tomorrow on Friday, they're going to have the day off, but they'll be back at it at Saturday. And then we'll be 8 days away from actual Bears football, or preseason Bears football. I still consider it Bears football because I'm excited for it. And if you're excited, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe so you do not miss another Chicago Bears update, and also download the podcast. Just search for Unbearable Sports on Spotify, Apple Podcast, you name it. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair and you